The land around Dawson's cabin had always been quiet, as if the plains themselves respected the solitude of a woman who had lost nearly everything. Clara Dawson lived on the edge of that silence, her cabin leaning with age, the boards worn from years of dust storms and hard winters. To the townsfolk, she was just another widow left behind by the unforgiving frontier. They whispered often about her late husband, Jonas Dawson, a man who had once carried the gleam of gold dust in his pockets and the greed of the hills in his eyes. Jonas had vanished years ago, swallowed by the same wilderness that had lured him. Some said he wandered off chasing a vein of gold that didn't exist. Others muttered darker things, that men who searched for riches too long eventually got claimed by the very ground they dug. Clara never spoke of it. She survived by her sewing, her garden, and her own determination, but fate has a way of unearthing secrets when least expected. One evening, while repairing a broken plank in the corner of her cabin floor, Clara's lantern flickered across something unusual. The wood beneath was softer than the rest, and when she pried it up, her breath caught. Wrapped in brittle cloth, hidden under layers of dust, were heavy lumps that glittered in the wavering light. Gold, real, solid, undeniable. Nuggets and fine dust, enough to change her life in an instant. Her hands trembled as she held the weight of it, realizing that Jonas had hidden this treasure all along, perhaps before the night he disappeared. It was proof that he had indeed struck gold, and proof that he had intended to keep it from everyone, even her. Shock quickly gave way to fear. The gold was not just wealth, it was danger. Clara knew the stories of men who killed for a single nugget, how greed corroded even the purest of hearts. She thought of hiding it again, of burying it deeper in the ground where no one would ever find it. But even as she considered it, she felt the hairs on the back of her neck stand. She wasn't alone. For weeks, someone had been watching. At first it was only a sense, the prickling unease that eyes were on her from the trees beyond the cabin. Then came the sign she could not ignore: boot prints in the dirt when no visitor had passed, her cabin's window latch loose though she never left it unfastened, shadows in the distance that disappeared when she looked twice. Clara knew the frontier well enough to understand, someone had been waiting for this very moment, that someone was Harlan Pike. A drifter by appearance, but not by intention. Pike had once ridden the hills with Jonas Dawson. He had heard the same promises of gold, seen the same glimmering veins of ore in the dark earth. Where Jonas had taken the treasure and hidden it, Pike had carried only resentment and a hunger that festered over the years. He had tracked rumors through saloons and camps, piecing together whispers until they led him to Clara's lonely cabin. And when her lantern light revealed her discovery, Pike's patience hardened into resolve. The gold was his, and he would take it no matter the cost. In town, Clara tried to carry herself as though nothing had changed. She sewed for the storekeeper's wife, traded eggs for flour, spoke kindly to neighbors. Yet her eyes darted more often to the horizon, and her hand lingered too long on her porch rifle. People noticed. They had always said the widow lived strangely, and now her distracted glances only fueled their gossip. Pike fed on it, drifting into town under the guise of friendliness, asking casual questions about Clara, about her husband's old claim, about whether the widow still lived alone. His words were honeyed, but his eyes told the truth: sharp, measuring, and cold nights became harder for Clara. The gold weighed not only in her hands but in her mind. Each creak of the cabin boards made her heart race. Each gust of wind across the roof shingles carried with it the imagined sound of footsteps. Then one evening, in the hush before a storm, she knew for certain. Outside her window, in the flash of lightning, she saw him, Pike's silhouette against the rain, standing too still, watching too long. The shadow she had feared was flesh and blood. When he finally came, it was not as a thief in the dark but as a predator certain of his prey. The storm battered the cabin as Pike forced his way inside, his eyes glinting with the same hunger Jonas once carried. He told her truths she wished she had never heard, that Jonas had not simply vanished, but had died at Pike's own hand during a bitter fight over the very gold she now guarded. Jonas had bled out on the rocks of the hills, betrayed by the partner who now stood in her cabin. The treasure beneath her floorboards was bought with her husband's life, but Clara was no stranger to survival. Years of solitude had taught her how to endure, and years of grief had carved away her fear. Pike wanted gold, but he had underestimated the resolve of the woman who kept it. Using the storm, the flicker of lantern light, and the knowledge of every creek and hollow in her cabin, Clara lured him to the very boards where she had first made the discovery. In his arrogance, he never saw the trap until it was too late. What had been a hiding place for gold became a grave for the man who killed to possess it. When silence returned, broken only by the storm's fading growl, Clara sat alone with the truth. The gold had never been a blessing. It had consumed Jonas, driven Pike to murder, and nearly cost her own life. In its weight she saw only misery. She could not keep it, not when she knew the price it carried. So when the sun rose the next morning, Clara made her choice. She brought the gold to town, not as a widow guarding her fortune but as a woman determined to turn greed into something greater. The nuggets and dust were given to rebuild the town's weathered church, to raise a schoolhouse where children could learn without fear of the harsh world beyond, to buy medicine for the sick who had long gone without. The people who had once whispered about her now saw her differently, not as the strange widow of Jonas Dawson, but as the woman who gave back what others had killed to possess. And Clara herself was changed. No longer did she glance toward the trees with dread of eyes watching. The shadow that had haunted her cabin was gone, buried along with the man who carried it. She lived still in the weathered cabin, but now its lantern light shone not with fear, but with quiet strength. At dawn, she would sit by her window, hands folded, watching the horizon blaze with gold that no man could ever steal. The land itself seemed to breathe easier, as if it too was finally freed from the hunger that had cursed it. The treasure hidden under her floorboards had threatened to destroy her, but in the end, Clara Dawson had chosen something stronger than greed. She had chosen peace.